Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome back to another installment. I guess this is the third episode actually of Starter Set Saturdays, a mostly bi-weekly series that I'm alternating back and forth with 4E Fridays, where I go over the starter sets that I have in my collection and give them a review offering numerical values or scores on four different categories to average them together to get the overall final score of the starter set. Now, in the very first episode, I did go over the grading sort of criteria and what everything means. So I'm not going to keep recapping it in every installment, but this is only the third episode, so to make things really, really brief, there's four categories that I'm looking at: production quality and presentation being lumped together, rules quality, adventure quality, and value for your dollar. And each of those will get whole number scores from the range of 1 to 10, although most realistically, very few things are going to go beyond or below a 5, and not too many things are going to go above an 8. Because for me, a 5 is considered the average or the sort of like the minimum, expectations. And very few starter sets go below that. But I'm a huge fan of starter sets. I love them. They're one of my favorite things to collect. I've got quite a few of them in my collection, and this is one that I've actually been wanting to talk about for a while, because I've had this for a while, and I did an unboxing video, but I don't think I ever really went beyond that. So it's going to be exciting to finally give this thing its review. So Star Trek Adventures, the starter set, I think this released in 2018. Is what we have here. Yeah, 2018. So I think I picked this up in like 2019. It had been out for a little bit before I finally ended up picking it up. And one of the things about this, though, is it doesn't have a printed MSRP included on the box. So if you take a look at the barcode here, a lot of products will have a smaller secondary barcode where the last four numbers are the manufacturer suggested retail price, or MSRP, usually in US dollars. So I spent some time trying to look up this particular starter set, and I've been getting a lot of like secondary market prices, which like are insane. Like I've seen some listings of this go for like $150, which is nuts to me. But anyway, but it seems like the MSRP had different ranges. I found like for the US prices, anywhere from like $24.99 to $29.99, and the Canadian price was around $34.99 to about $39.99. So about $25 to $30 US and about $35 to $40 Canadian. So I'm going to be sort of operating off of those prices, and I'm going to use the value for dollar based off of the high end of that range, because I don't know the exact prices. It's really hard to find information about that. And because of that, it seems like it's likely that stores would sort of base it off of their own cost to bring it in, and probably set their own prices within sort of a bit of a range here. So anyway, that's what we're going to go off of here. So the first category, there we go. The first category is the production quality and the presentation. And let me tell you, as a big time like next gen era Trek fan, particularly Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, those are my favorite Star Trek series of all time. And this thing does an amazing job with its presentation. As far as production quality is concerned, the box is nice and sturdy. Again, I've had this for 6 years or so. It's been sliding on and off my shelf several times over the course of those years, and there's very little in terms of actual shelf wear, so a really good job there. On the back of the box, again, you got some more artwork there, a breakdown of what's included, and you've got, of course, the traditional picturing of what's actually like the contents of the box there. So again, really, really nice looking there. But where this thing absolutely shines, and we're going to take a closer look at the contents here in a moment, but where this thing absolutely shines is in the presentation of like the booklets themselves. First of all, they do have their own individual covers, which is cool to see. But if you look on the inside, What's amazing about this is the presentation of the booklets are done to capture the feel of the LCAR surfaces for the next gen era. So the LCARs was sort of the computer system, I can't remember what the acronym stands for. Retrieval system were the last two words. Library, I think, was the first word. I forget what the A part of it stood for, but they just do an absolutely amazing job. And there's some incredible artwork here. You've got lots of references to things, like we've got the characters on the bridge here, failing miserably as they're going through the Kobayashi Maru test at like Starfleet Academy. So there's just some great references kind of all throughout this. But yeah, amazing presentation on here. And, I don't give this score out lightly. But again, as a Trek fan, it's almost impossible to give this thing anything less than a 9 out of 10. So the presentation on this is absolutely incredible. So for that category, and for the first time in this series, we're going to be giving this a 9 out of 10. All right, let's take a look at the contents of the box here before we go into the actual other categories. So this is a 2D20 system. So we got 2D20s included, as well as 4 of these challenge dice, which are just your D6s with some unique symbols on them. 2 sides are blank. 2 sides have the Starfleet insignia on it, and then you've got a 1 or a 2 on there. And you've got your D20s, which are unfortunately just generic. They don't include like the Starfleet comm badge symbol on the ones for the dice, because this is a roll under system, so rolling ones are really good and rolling high numbers are bad. So it's a little bit unfortunate that the D20s are kind of generic, but at least the D6s have the comm badge and are designed specifically for the game. We have also got, whoops, that's popped out. You've also got 3 sheets of card stock tokens, including some player characters here on the front, also including some that don't actually appear as like the ready-made characters, so they might be NPCs or just some other, character types if you decide to make your own characters going forward. You do have your Galaxy-class starship, and you've also got these alert tokens here. These are called threat tokens. And, we'll sort of get into what that is a little bit later on. We've also got these 6 momentum tokens for the player characters. And we've got, again, some Romulans. We've got some named Romulan characters. We've got some Klingons. And we've got a couple of Romulan warbirds there. So really cool to have those 3 sets of cards. We've got some maps included as well. So this would be like your ship combat map, and there's a couple of different locations there. And then again, 2 different locations on that one. So we got 2 double-sided maps. And then we've got our Star Trek Adventures rule booklet. Then we got a pretty beefy starter set scenario. So this is the adventure, or the campaign, I guess you can call it, the starter campaign. All right, and there we've got our character sheets as well, including the player character ship. So the player characters are members of a crew on a Galaxy-class starship. So as somebody who loves the Enterprise D, like, the Galaxy class is my favorite starship class of all time, with the Sovereign class, like the Enterprise E being the next one there, and then like the Excelsior class sort of being like my 3rd favorite Star Trek design of all time. But yeah, to be members of a Galaxy class crew, like I still actually have my original Next Generation Enterprise toy that I had when I was a kid. I've lost everything else. Like I had like the comm badge and the tricorder and the phaser, as well as like some action figures. I don't have those anymore, but I still have my Enterprise, which has the buttons on it that you can make the sounds for impulse engine or going to warp or firing the phasers or photons. So yeah, I love myself a Galaxy class ship, so it's really cool that we've got that there. And on the back of each of these sheets also has some quick reference guides, again, in the LCARS design here. So it even says LCARS mode. on there. So, it looks like an actual like comm panel that you would see. And this one gives you some charts or tables for spending momentum, whether you're on like personal, like hand to hand, or like character driven areas of the adventure, or if you're involved in ship combat, which we'll again talk about a little bit here. So it's really cool to see that included. And then we've got our 5 characters. So we got our first officer here. So he is a Bajoran. So he's like the first officer. The captain, nobody plays the captain in this one. The captain is an NPC. But we do have the first officer there, so we still have a chain of command on the back of his. Again, I love the fact that this looks like an actual comm panel. It's got commanding officer references, so things that commanding officers can do in addition to some of the standard actions, so that's really cool to see. We've got the con officer, so this is like the pilot. Values: to fly the ship, know the ship. Lieutenant commander, that is a human. Again, wearing the red uniform there. And again, we've got like the helm and navigation, and you see like the controls. It's just, again, like this thing definitely earns the 9 out of 10 presentation, 100%. We got our chief engineer, lieutenant junior grade, so he's actually an officer and not an enlisted man like Chief O'Brien was. And this is a joined Trill, so he's got the Trill and he's got a Dell symbiote, so he's Hanor Dell. And we got the sensors and internal systems, so again, things that the engineer would need to know, so awesome stuff there. We got our chief of security, an Andorian, with the security, oversight, and tactical reference there, like the little targeting thing, system, like the target lock. Oh, just so good, so good. And then we got our medical officer, who is a Vulcan. And on the back, some conflict references for combat actions, for combat tasks, and for attacks and damage. So yeah, really, really cool stuff. Again, I love the presentation of it all. I love the fact that each character sheet has some quick reference stuff on there as well. Let's take a look at the rule booklet here, because this is the next category that I want to discuss as far as like the actual ranking or grading goes. So, again, amazing presentation on this product. We've got sort of the United Federation of Planets emblem there. And we got our rules of play with the Elcar sort of design to it. The rules are fairly well, like they're really well done in this. They're very simple and straight to the point. What's also great is because the D6s are custom, if you don't have, or if you want to use more 6-sided dice, but you don't have any more of these specific challenge dice to use, which are typically only used for like rolling damages for like attacks in the Star Trek Adventures. So you've actually got a table here for just rolling regular 6-sided dice, like just a regular D6. So a 1 and 2 are their normal value. A 3 or 4 are treated as nothing. And then 5 or 6 are considered to be 1 plus an additional effect, and we'll kind of talk about that sort of thing here in a little bit as well. But we've got our descriptions of how to perform tasks. So if we take a look at each character here, we'll just grab the first officer one. So each character has 6 attributes and 6 disciplines. So when you're trying to make a check for something, the game master will tell you which combination of attribute and discipline to use. So for example, if you are attempting something, like to talk somebody down, for example, you might use a reason command roll. So what you would do is you would add the number for your reason to the number for your command, and that's the target number that you need to roll equal to or below then in order to succeed. So reason and command, for example, that would be a 15. So if you roll your 2d20 and you get 15 or less on the die, then it's considered a success. If you roll a natural 1, I believe it's considered to be 2 successes. And actually, if you roll under your discipline number, I think that's also considered to be 2 successes there. So we've got the different combinations that you can do there. There's also different focuses. No, sorry. Actually, yeah. If you roll a natural one, it's considered to be two successes. However, if your focus can apply to whatever you're doing, so for example, diplomacy might be one here that you could use for that reason command roll. So if it falls under diplomacy, or if you can have it sort of explain to the game master why it would fall under diplomacy, if you roll your discipline number or under, then it counts as two successes as well. So normally you have to roll a natural one, but if your focus can apply, then you can roll whatever this number is here. So for a command, for example, if you were to roll a 5 or under using diplomacy specifically, then it would count as two successes instead of just needing to roll a natural one. Rolling a natural 20 basically adds a complication to the situation. And if you roll more successes than are required, because the game master will set a difficulty number, which is normally between 0 and 5. So yes, it can go beyond just the two normal d20s that you get for every roll. So if the task has a difficulty greater than 2, you obviously are better off having more than 2 d20 to roll. So there are ways to buy extra d20s. If you've previously rolled checks and you had extra successes beyond what were necessary, the extra successes can be stored as points of, it's not determination, but points of momentum. So these 6 here, you can get extra momentum. You can only ever have a maximum, I think, of 6 points in the pool. But you can use 1 point of momentum to buy your first additional d20. And then it would cost 2 points to add your second d20. And it would take an additional 3 to add 3. So if you wanted to use your momentum and you had a pool of 6 to add 3d6 to your roll, then it would take all 6. 1 for the first, an additional 2 for the second, and then an additional 3 for the third. Conversely, if you don't have momentum, you can also buy extra dice by giving the game master threat. So these alert tokens here, they represent threat, and it's the same breakdown. So if you want to add 1 extra die, you can give the game master 1 point of threat. If you want to add a second die, it's 1 for the first, and then an additional 2 for the second. And if you need to add 3, because maybe it's like a difficulty task 5 or something, and there's no other way to get extra dice, then you can give an additional 3 to get that third die. So 1 for the first, 2 for the second, for 3 total, and then an additional 3 for a third. So you can give 6 threat to add 3 dice to the system as well. Player characters can also assist, so they can roll a die for you, adding, like, using their attributes instead of your own, and potentially their own focuses for the roll as well. So so you can have a player character add a die to it. Your ship systems might also be able to add a die to it as well. And you also get determination. And if you end up using a point of determination, which is a little bit harder to come by throughout the game, but if you use a point of determination, then you add a die to the roll, and it's considered to have rolled a natural 1. So you can actually start off with just 2 successes there if it's a really sort of key or clutch thing. So it's pretty cool. There are also difficulty 0 tasks, which generally speaking don't require rolls, although the game master might be lenient and allow you to roll so that you can build up some momentum to have banked in case you need it later on. So that's sort of the basic dice mechanic there. And again, the D6s are usually used exclusively for like damage rolls. So if you're taking damage or if you're dealing damage, you can roll the D6s. And the number of successes you get on the D6 determines the outcome of that. So yeah, again, really simple. It's a pretty straightforward system. It sounds a bit more complicated maybe than it is in practice, but it's a very easy concept. You just add 2 numbers together. You're looking to roll that number or less, and natural 1s are good, natural 20s are bad. And if you can justify using your focus as part of this roll, then you can get 2 successes if you roll your discipline number or under. So that's basically the way that that plays out. So yeah, the rules really well laid out. Again, some really nice artwork all throughout there. We got the different phaser types, which is again kind of cool to see. The hand phaser, the standard phaser. We got our phaser rifle from the First Contact movie, which is really cool to see. We got a character battling Cardassian here. There's some information on our momentum spends and things like that. And then we actually have some starship rules. So this is something that you don't typically see in starter sets that have like ship combat as part of the full rule set. And we'll see that as we go through some of the other like science fiction or science fantasy RPGs that I have. So it's actually really cool to see starship combat information presented in here as well. So you get a bit of a variety of things. You get your normal like away mission stuff with your specific player character, but then you also have the ability to fight ships in like actual ship-to-ship combat. So yeah, really, really cool. The rules are extremely well done. There's no character creation, which is, kind of unfortunate. But as far as like the presentation and the layout and the variety with the ship combat stuff included as well, again, I don't like to take away points for lacking character creation. I like to add a point for character creation. And I typically won't go above an 8. And I feel like if character creation was included, if you had a few more pages in this on making your character, then this would have been an easy 8 out of 10. So as it stands, I'm going to give the rules quality, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. It's still really good. Like 7 out of 10 goes well beyond just what is required. And the inclusion of ship combat is a big way to sort of going towards that. So really, really great stuff there. Then we've got the adventure quality, and oh boy, I really don't want to spoil too much here, but this is a full, like, 3-act campaign. So you do get, like, quite a bit of gameplay out of this. The total page count for the adventure booklet is 49, so about 51 pages. For the adventure book here. So a pretty solid number. And again, we get 3 different acts to go through here, including the first act where you're coming across a distressed Oberth-class ship, because of course it's going to be an Oberth-class ship that is experiencing difficulties or distress. I mean, these are jokingly the starships made out of like chewing gum and paper mache. They're always known for they're always known for like being destroyed or being in distress. So they're not the hardiest of ships. Like if I were a Starfleet officer and I were assigned to an Oberth class, I would be writing letters home to family, expressing my final goodbyes before every mission, because they don't have a good success rate. So, again, I don't really want to go too much into spoiler territory, but we do get, like I said, a full 3-act adventure scenario, which does include, in the 3rd act, it does actually include some ship combat. So you actually get to play both as your player characters and as crew members during an actual like ship combat scenario. So you get a lot of variety there, and this scenario does bring back some kind of obscure things from the Next Generation, and even a little bit of DS9 there. So again, I don't want to spoil things. I think this is a really, really cool adventure. The only thing I'll say is that there's a little bit of a conspiracy going on. And that's the only hint that I'll give as to the nature of what's going on. But yeah, you got the characters investigating the Albuquerque there, the lost ship, and you do have like the captain's log that gets read out at the beginning. So how you sort of start. I think each of the acts has one of those, which is really cool to see. There's our there's our Oberth class, our poor Oberth class ship, and it does actually give the stats for it, which is Something, I guess, like I don't think you're going to be using that in ship combat, and if you are, you may as well just give up. But yeah, again, really cool stuff. This scenario, it does have you interacting with, different environments, different locations, different aspects of the show. There's run-ins with Klingons and Romulans, and again, some of the more obscure but kind of cool aspects of like some of the early TNG stuff as well. So again, I would love to do a spoiler. I might do a spoiler full breakdown of the scenario here, but what I will say is you're likely to get at least a couple sessions of gameplay out of this scenario, so you can get probably about like 6 to 8 hours of gaming in based off of what's in here. And with the fact that every time you're rolling dice, it has the chance to impact the narrative, can change things up as well. And we'll sort of talk about that here. So with momentum and threat. So the Game Master starts the beginning of the adventure with 2 points of threat, I think, per each player character that's present in the group. And the Game Master gets to spend threats doing things like maybe increasing the difficulty of a task, or to add a complication to something that the players are attempting to overcome, or to do things like adding reinforcements. So you could have extra villains that you have to fight. So like just standard grunt level, for example, like grunt level Romulans would be 1 point of threat per added NPC into that battle, or 2 points of threat for like a special character. So maybe like a higher ranking character, or maybe even like a named character type of thing. So when you're rolling your checks and stuff like that, you can end up generating a complication as a player. And I think that typically happens if you roll like a natural 20. It adds a complication. And this is where one of my favorite aspects of the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game, but I will say it might be one of the kind of not beginner-friendly elements of this game system as well. So it's something that if you have a really good sense of like being able to improvise and think on your feet, then this is going to be a great game. Because like I said, each dice roll can tell a story. You have the characters helping with that as well by trying to like bring their focuses into their ability checks and stuff. So what I would suggest, if you are a first-time game master running this type of scenario, running this particular starter set, and you're not super strong at improvisation yet, you'll get there. Don't worry. It's a practice skill. It's not something that you start with. It's something that, will take time to build up. But what I would suggest is if the players roll a complication, and the rule books do tell you this, the Game Master can determine that the complication doesn't actually occur in exchange for the Game Master getting 2 points of threat. And I would suggest making pretty liberal use of this if you can't figure out like an immediate thing. Like one of the examples is the characters have to take a shuttlecraft over to the Albuquerque because there's some subspace interference, the technobabble that prevents transportation or teleportation from working properly. So the characters have to land their shuttle in the shuttle bay. It's kind of a routine thing, but if they end up rolling, and I do apologize, my allergies have been really bugging me this past week, so that's why I haven't been doing too much in terms of videos, but I really want to get this out. So if you end up rolling a complication when you're trying to land the shuttlecraft, for example, you could land the shuttle, right? It doesn't mean that you fail in the task. And often you shouldn't fail to the point where it ends the story. Like if you're trying to pilot the shuttle into the shuttle bay and you fail the roll and get a complication, you shouldn't have the ship crash and everybody die, right? That's bad. But what you can have is that the ship ends up taking damage as it enters the shuttle bay. So one of the nacelles might get caught on, the outside, door of the going into the shuttle bay, right? Or you could end up going in a little too fast and slamming into a bulkhead and causing some computer systems to be damaged, and it's something that would need repair to fix, right? So that's sort of an example. If you're in if you're in a combat scenario, and you fire a phaser and you miss and or even hit but still get a complication, then that complication could be that you hit a computer terminal that you actually wanted to access, so that you have to do some repair work on it before you can get the information from it. So there's kind of things like that. But if you can't think of something immediately, rather than bringing the game to a halt to try to figure something out, the best thing to do is just to take that and just bank those 2 points of threat for later, because you can always add a complication later on when you've had an opportunity to prepare it, right? So there's things that you can do there, like the characters might be trying to get information from an NPC. If they're trying to hide the fact that they're Starfleet, to get this information, you could have the complication being that another individual in that location recognizes them as officers, and that could make things more difficult, adding like a +1 to the difficulty of like trying to persuade them to give this information. So there's things that you can do with that. Also, because you're beginning, don't be afraid to turn this into a cooperative thing, and discuss with the players maybe how, like, what an appropriate complication might be, but don't bring the game to a complete and total halt every time. Like, if you can't think of something, then bank it and come up with something later on, or just use that threat to increase the difficulties of things, or to add some extra NPCs to some encounters, or things along those lines. So it's a great dice storytelling mechanic, but it can be a little intimidating. There are things in place, like I said, that you can use, and I would highly, highly recommend. So the scenario being pretty beefy, including ship combat and away mission stuff, including story elements from some, like, kind of, I wouldn't say forgotten, but like older, like TNG era stuff that never really went anywhere beyond like the 1 or 2 episodes that they were mentioned in. It's just a really great starting campaign for Star Trek fans. So I'm going to give the adventure an 8 out of 10. And then finally, we've got the value for price. And this one's a little bit harder to determine because I couldn't find a really solid number for the price. If you have one, like if you have something where, like, what the MSRP of this should be, then by all means, please let me know. But because what I found were ranges, I'm going to base my score off of the high end of the range. I think this was around a $40 starter set for me when I purchased this in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, although I waited until they had like a pretty good sale on before I ended up picking this up. But let's just say that we're using the high-end prices here. For $29.99 US or $39.99 Canadian, you still get a pretty good bang for your buck here. You've got these 3 sheets of cardstock tokens. You've got double-sided maps that you can use of various locations that conflicts can occur in. You've got your 5 characters and your ship. You've got a 50+ page scenario that you can go through that will get you a couple sessions of gameplay out of. So there's like some really good, decent quality here. But for if you're paying $40 Canadian, or if you were paying $30 US for this at the time, it's maybe you would have wanted a little bit more. Like maybe you would have wanted the cardboard tokens to be like standees instead. I still think this is really solid overall. I think this is a very good quality, a very good value for what you're paying here. But again, it is based off of a range. I wish I had a more solid price. I'm going to give the value for your price to be a 7 out of 10. It's still above the bare minimum. Like, they still added things that, they didn't necessarily need to do, but they did, and that's great. Like the momentum tokens, the threat tokens, the player character and adversary tokens there, the starship tokens. That's great. The only thing I would say that I think would have been better, and we'll get into this, I guess, with the pros and cons here. But the D20s, it is a 2D20 system. It would have been nice if the D20s were branded with the Combadge logo on the ones as well, just to make it feel a bit more, connected to the Star Trek universe. But overall, I'm giving the value for price a 7 out of 10. So 9 out of 10 for production, quality / presentation, especially presentation, is easily a 9 out of 10. It's absolutely incredible as a Trek fan. The rules quality is a 7 out of 10. Would have been an 8 if they had character creation, but again, unfortunately they didn't. Adventure quality, I am giving an 8 out of 10. I will do, if you're interested, I can do a spoiler-filled review of the scenario, but again, I just don't want to spoil it because it's such a cool scenario, and a lengthy, sort of beefy scenario as well. So that got an 8 out of 10. And value for the price is a 7 out of 10 because, again, I couldn't find a fully nailed down price. But this does get an overall score of a 7.75 out of 10. And again, I think that's pretty fair. The starter set is meant to be an introduction to the game. It's meant to be sort of like a good first impression. And 7.75 is really good. Again, like a 5 is considered the bare minimum. And like a 10 is literal perfection, so that's never really going to happen. But 7.75, I think, is pretty fair. And to go over the pros and cons, we'll do the cons first because I like to end on a positive note. So the cons would be obviously a lack of character creation. I think that character creation can be a very useful tool for learning a game because it helps you fill out your character sheet so you know where things are just based off of doing that yourself. So I would say lack of character creation is a bit of a strike against it. This is a licensed product, and that is both a benefit and a drawback. So because this is very strongly Star Trek themed, like there's no confusing this with anything else. It has like the technobabble, it has things like your Galaxy class ships, it has your Romulans and your Klingons, and it's, it is Star Trek through and through. Like there's no confusing this with anything else. So if you're not a fan of Star Trek, then it's going to be a bit more difficult to kind of sway you into giving this game a try. I mean, it's an absolutely fantastic role-playing game, and I think that Modiphius did an incredible job with it. But being a licensed product, if you're not interested in the license, it's going to be harder to kind of get your attention. So if you're not a Trek fan, it would be harder to get excited or get into this role-playing game. And the other thing is that I really wish that they would have included more D20s. So 2D20, it is a 2D20 system, so including the 2D20s, that's on brand with what, the rule set is. But oftentimes you're going to be rolling more than those 2 dice because you can either add more through momentum or threat. You might add more from a character helping you or a computer system helping you. And you can get difficulties requiring a certain number of successes that just aren't possible on 2 dice. So I think that, if they would have had at least 4 D20 in addition to the 4 D6, I think that would have been better. I think that would have been, a lot more useful. Instead of having to have the players, if you're only using the dice that come with this set, you're going to have players re-rolling dice. And again, if you're beginners, you might not be as good at remembering kind of what you rolled the first time. So if you're rolling 4 dice, and you only have the 2 to go through, then you roll the first 2, have to pick them back up and roll the second 2. So you got to make sure you note how many successes you got on those first 2. And it might be handy as a beginner to write that information down. So if they would have included at least 2 more D20, because I don't think you're going to be rolling 5 all that often, but being able to roll 3 or 4 D20 is a lot more reasonable for some of these situations. So it would have been nice if they would have included that. So those are the cons. The pros is that the production or the presentation on this is incredible. This is one of the best presentations of a starter set for a licensed product that I have ever seen. I mean, it literally feels like you're looking at the comm panels, and like these are computer readouts of like the Aberth class, the Albuquerque, and sort of what it looks like, and the different things going throughout it. It's just, the artwork is great. And again, like with the licensed property, they could have taken the easy route out. Like they could have absolutely just taken still images or screenshots from the shows and used that as the artwork. And I don't think people would have necessarily been opposed to that. And I think there were older versions of the Star Trek role-playing game that actually did that, and I don't think that was ever something that was considered to be like a negative against it, but they went the extra step and actually had artwork commissioned for everything. So everything that's in there art-wise is an actual work of art and not just like a still image from a show. And they will sometimes show like actual characters. Like there's one image of Picard sitting in the conference room with the different enterprises on the wall there, and he's got like his cup of tea, and it's art. Like it's a painting that somebody did, and it looks amazing. So the presentation in this is again one of the best that I've ever seen. I will say the downside of black pages though is that it is a thumbprint magnet, and you will be able to see where you were handling the book. Especially if you're running this in something like, say, the summer where it's a little bit hotter out and you might be a little bit more prone to having sort of, like sweat on your hands or stuff like that. So, but other than that, like, so the presentation, absolutely incredible. It captures the essence of the source material incredibly well. Again, I wish that I could talk about the scenario without completely spoiling it, but it is a mystery. That's kind of what's going on, and I just don't want to spoil that here. But it does bring a callback to kind of a forgotten element of early TNG. That's just really well done. It's really cool to see that stuff sort of come back. And you can tell when a licensed product is done by people that are passionate about that license, because things like this just absolutely shine through and they capture the feel of Star Trek incredibly well. And this is a licensed product. So the final point is that this being a licensed product, you have that built-in fan base. So like I said, it's a positive and a negative. With the negative, if you're not a fan, it's a lot harder to get you on board. But if you are a fan, and you're a fan of Star Trek, and you're a fan of tabletop role-playing games, this is a great option for people in the middle part of that Venn diagram of Trek fans and tabletop RPG fans, who I suspect is a pretty large section of that. Like, I think there's quite a bit of crossover there. So yeah, you've got a built-in fan base that this does an incredible job of honoring the legacy of the franchise. It's incredibly well done. And if you're a Trek fan who loves tabletop RPGs, then Star Trek Adventures is something that I highly recommend you check out. So again, overall, the final score for this starter set is a 7.75 out of 10. So that is the end of this episode of Starter Set Saturdays. However, we are going to continue this series. Obviously, I've got quite a few more starter sets to go through. I even have a few more that should be arriving sometime this year, hopefully. I normally will determine which one I want to do next, but I think with this series, what I'm going to start doing is, I know which one I want to end the series on, but I think I'm going to start having this actually be a poll for viewers to be able to vote on. So by the time this video is out and you're able to watch it, if you go onto the, I think, community tab on my channel page, then the poll for the next installment, which will come out in 2 weeks' time, should be up there for you to vote on. So I'm not sure exactly which 4 options I'm going to go with yet, but you'll be able to see them. You'll be able to vote on them by the time this video comes out. Anyway, thank you all so very much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what are some of your favorite Trek memories, either based off of the series and watching the shows or movies, playing some of the video games, or what are some of your favorite memories of the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game if you've had a chance to play and or run it. So let me know all that in the comments below. Thank you all so very much for your time. I truly appreciate it. We'll see you in the next one. Until then,